So I would like to speak on this new lecture on French astrology on the fact that in fact we are really divided in two opposite remedies to the situation of astrology. Some of us believe that astrology has to be simplified. Some of us believe, on the contrary, that astrology has to be complexified. I recently interviewed an astrologer, a French astrologer from Troyes in France, his name is Brun, B-R-U-N, and he is an advocate of a considerable complexification of astrology, which is indeed one of the trends. European astrology in the 20th century was convinced that we would not have enough planets or specific points. The German astrologers have contributed much in this direction, with the midpoints, with the Uranian school, which introduced new planets, hypothetical planets, as they called them. And of course, there was the discovery of Pluto in 1930, which complexified, of course, the system, and also new planets beyond Pluto, like Aries. Hubert Brun is very much fond of Aries, for instance, and of all these asteroids and nanoplanets. I know that in the USA they have a considerable interest for the asteroids, and that sometimes we introduce dozens of them in the chart through the help of computers. As explained to us 10 years ago, Julian Sturm Mulet when he came to Paris. And we have this tendency, which is encouraged by the fact that since there are 12 signs, since we could not stay, we could not remain in a situation, in intermediary situation, when Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto had signs which were attributed to them, and that Mercury and Venus continued to have two signs instead of one, like had Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So there is a sort of state of confusion, and that's why some astrologers, and myself when I was 40 years ago, I believe that the astrology has to be completed, like sort of table of Mendeleev, completed by adding X, Y, or whatever beyond Pluto, etc. And so this was also encouraging, this connection with astrology was encouraging the process of complexification, because they would say, well, since we started using Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, we cannot return to Saturn, and we have to go on, and that is a dilemma. So finally, they have, well, most astrologers in France are satisfied with a sort of, status quo, and they, well, okay, some planets are more signs, more rulerships than others. Okay, well, this is the way it is. Well, people like Carteret, Lasson, or Purgot, and Joulin, and Brun, and Perbrun, well, there are quite a line genealogy of people who believe that we had to be inspired by the zodiac, by the 12 sign zodiac, to create the sky of astrology, and which would mean as many planets or asteroids as they were signs. So, in the case of Brun, it is still more complicated, because he introduced the idea, which is already known, but not too much developed, of the converse transit. His astrology, he called it the 4D astrology. And he says, well, okay, well, why don't we calculate also the situation before the birth? For instance, he says, well, if there is a consultation at a certain moment, we have one chart for the consultation, one chart for the natal of the birth, and one chart which is symmetrical to the chart of the consultation, which makes three charts. And for the solar returns, he also does this sort of operation of a symmetrical process. And he finished his interview with me by announcing for the next year more and more complexification. We call it the Olympic astrology or something like that. So this sort of spin of complexification, which is very much in connection with theosophical astrology, karmical astrology, individual astrology by all means, correspond to a real need, supposed need to create a whole universe around the person. For that reason also he is very much interested in practicing the return of Saturn, Uranus to the natal chart, etc. Everything connected to the person, to his birth chart, etc. So this is a very hyper-individualistic astrology, which is very much connected with the idea of the trip of the soul throughout different lives, etc. Astrology becomes, in this case, a sort of mirror of the journey of the soul. On the other hand, curiously, Brown is very, very conscious of the conditions of the consultation itself, and which is a sort of contradiction, because all this complexity, finally, when you reach a level of the practice, tends to vanish. But it's true that, as I made the reflection when I spoke with him, it is true that the more factors you can combine, there will be probably the possibility of electing a dominant planet, which will have more connections with the whole system of orbits. So finally, this complexity is not in contradiction with the fact that at the end of the process, you will determine the major planets or major configuration, because it will be determined by the fact that there will be more connection, more aspects, more whatever, with certain planets. So those planets will be designated as the dominant planets. So there are certain sort of paradox which are very interesting. So, as I said, this tendency is quite obvious among the practitioners of astrology, but there is an opposite trend, an opposite school, which I represent, among others, but I think I'm one of the most significant leaders in this school, which I call also the minimal school, which is exactly the contrary. We have too many factors. We have to return to a more purer, or simpler stuff, which of course means in practice, but you are not going to study the individual as such. No. What I mean by that? I mean by that well, like when you go to a doctor, you before for a doctor doctor, you before all you are a human being, and all human beings have such a number of similarities in terms of anatomy. Yeah. And if you divide into men and women, that's you have really two homogeneous groups. Now, if you have to study one specific person, you will refer this specific person to the group she belongs to. If she's a woman, but then you know what is as a doctor, as a gynecologist, sexologist, you will know what is a woman, how it works, and you will determine if in some ways she's abnormal, she's not typical of what you expect from a woman physiologically. Maybe she has peculiarities which make things more complex, more difficult to handle, to manage, possibly. But still, you are not starting from an individual model, an individual pattern. And I have a great difficulty, I must say, and I always had, to believe that a pattern can be something individual. It's a sort of contradiction in terms. A pattern is the source of many, many developments and possibilities, but the pattern itself cannot be complex. Or if it is complex, it is a complexity for everyone. Some astrologer might react to this and say, well, the chart is also a pattern. The natal chart is a pattern, but a pattern which changes from one case to another case. So it's a sort of evolving pattern in mutation, pattern in progress. That's an interesting idea. My position is not that one. My position is that the dominant planet is not something which will emerge from the complexity of the sky. It is not the dominant planet is not relative. It doesn't depend on what the other planets do. I like the example of a detective like Hercule Poirot, the words of Agatha Christie. Let's imagine he has a group of suspect people in the house, and of course he can compare each of those people, and compare, evaluate all the people who are suspected, and finally he will find the real suspect, the real murderer, or whatever. I don't think that is the way it is the right method. No, not at all. I think that you have to work differently, and that's why I believe that Saturn is the planet by excellence of astrology. Not even Uranus, not even Neptune, but not even Mars or Jupiter, only Saturn. And I think that it's good enough, and it's quite enough to work in astrology. If you have, of course, given up the idea of introducing a person to a specific chart, to a specific image. And this has to do with, and we agreed with that with Hubert Brown, it has to do with the philosophy of the consultation itself. You see? reasons which might be very well connected with their family life, with their past, with the fact they suffered from anonymity, anonymous situation, when they were not recognized specifically. All these needs, this sort of exacerbated suffering ego, need, it corresponds to this sort of answer to have your chart in front of you, or more than one chart, with the bright three charts, maybe more. So that is a comfort to have this sort of representation, proof that you exist as a specific case which is not to be confused or assimilated to another case, which I do. I never say to the people, you are unique. But those people who are in favor of complex astrology are able to use this expression of unicity. It's a paradox, you know. The more complex astrology is, the more it can afford to speak about the unicity of the person. And the more astrology is simple, the less it will be easy to study what is unique in the person. So this is a real state, this is a real thing, in fact, you know, that there is a sort of astrology which is really in need of an individual tool. It doesn't mean, and I have this discussion with Brown that you can see on YouTube, it doesn't mean that you will interpret this chart. No. I would say you will show the chart, and that's good enough. You show the chart, you say, that's you, I will work with that, I will listen to you through the chart I have. So this is a proof you are somebody special. That's what they want to hear. Now, they don't want to hear so much on astrology, they just want to know that the astrologer has the right thing, has the right tool. And this is more visual than anything else. I give a great importance to visual things. Astrology in itself is visual. It's an observation of the sky, of certain signs, signals in the sky. The chart is visual. A cycle also, if I present this astrocyclone, it's visual. And the treatment in itself is in a certain way visual. It speaks by itself. As we say in French, a nice drawing is stronger than a long speech. See? So, in astrology, the visual aspect is essential. That's why I'm skeptical about the planets beyond Saturn, because you can't see them, and the ancients could not see them. And I think this is a real problem for the credibility of this sort of astrology.